started this platform was having that opportunity that if you don't know a place very well, and for me, and I've spoken about this, is one of the reasons that I contacted you, Sheena, was I wanted to run a reminiscence session on one of our wards, and the idea from that came from a person that used to come and talk when I was at the Black Country Trust, and it was just that opportunity to connect. So the next part will be in terms of our life packs. So it may be that what's coming up actually quite frequently in the moment is around sport, or more recently we spoke to someone in terms of culture, and there may be different things that people are thinking about. And actually, one thing that I've got to acknowledge is there's lots of things out there already. So in terms of the Gloving Project, Kay's, you said that actually there's a number of things that we're hoping to bring into the platform. Finally, we know, especially for older people, it can be really hard to get online. There may be difficulties in terms of knowing how to use the software or having access to it. And part of the project will be about supporting people to do that. Paul, I know you're on the workshop right now, and certainly you'll be one of the people we'll be coming to help us with that. We'll be shaping that up as we go along. I don't need to tell people that are on this call right now in terms of we know how important life story is, and it can be important for a number of reasons. It's incredibly rewarding to write your own. It can be empowering. For people that potentially are experiencing low mood, we know that it can offer opportunities to reflect on life and notice those times where we've overcome things, or special times in our life. For people living with dementia, it can help in terms of enhancing care. Oh, we've lost our bunting again. Enhancing care, being able to be included in conversation, to know, to be able to talk about what's important to us. This is for people with learning disabilities, or for children. So in terms of for life story work, it can make a difference across the lifespan and for a number of different sorts of disabilities or conditions, where people are able to bring their knowledge and share their experiences. They're not with us today, but the Association of Dementia Studies, in particular Shirley Evans, we won a grant from Historic England where we're actually looking at the impact of our home on our well-being. So as part of this project, we're really looking about the difference that can make. As well as that, and really importantly, they're also evaluating these workshops in order to make, Sheena and I, we said in the launch, didn't we, when we first thought about this project, it was in the Guildhall and it meant 1,500 people could attend. Coronavirus has put pay to that, and we're trying to do it by WebEx. I'll confess it's a learning curve for me. We have had a few pictures, so if there are things that you think, do you know what, maybe you didn't get the link in time, the speed was too fast, anything, actually that this would help me be able to engage better, please feedback. One of the things that somebody said was in terms of introducing ourselves, and if you'd like to write into the chat and say yes, that would be helpful, we can think about that. So the link to the Survey Monkey will go out to everybody, and it's there for you. I didn't need to include this, and I did email Maggie, who's Ron's daughter, recently, just sending the presentation. This is Ron, who very kindly shared his photographs and told me about his life. And I tell you what, and he makes me smile every time I see this, because I love this photo. He was a real cheeky chappy. And when he told me about some of the stories about how he used to jump off Worcester Bridge, and that his mum would get fined for it, it's those stories that he wanted to share in terms of Worcester, and they can be about sharing those stories with others, sharing them with family members. I know certainly for me that's something that's really important, and it's just to give you a sense of what a life story would look like. So that was just an opportunity to really, I'll probably put this slide in every workshop we do. So today, it's going to be a bit more interactive, and maybe with there being fewer of us, it will give us more opportunity to talk. we're really starting now to think about the platform and what that would look like. So there's 5 areas that we're talking about. One is about what the platform will look like. So how do we want to personalise it? People have asked a little bit in terms of does there need to be a social element of a place to chat? Well, then Sheena's already mentioned about your brilliant quizzes. They're just fantastic, really. Not that I'm very good at them. She keeps asking me how many I'm not score-wise. So we'll just be looking in terms, is there another element that we'd like? For me, there's also something about life stories can inform people in care. So for myself, working in the older adult mental health service, and we'd like to ask the question about whether you would like those to be connected. And then finally, and I've mentioned it before, people have started to speak about particular areas that they think would be helpful. So, for example, sport has come up quite significantly, really, Sheen, hasn't it, in terms of the different links and how important Worcester. The other that we recognised was in terms of culture and sort of different populations, and whether that would be something that people would like. So it's just going to sort of carry on. So if I then move to the first one, this is about how you would like it to look. And if I ask that first question in terms of what information would you like in your life story, when we ran this workshop on Friday, people were starting to talk about the idea of a scrapbook and being able perhaps to have different chapters. So what I'm going to do now is just pull my screen across. Paul and Dawn, I can't see you, and I'll also be looking to the chat box. It's just starting to sense of if you were coming onto a website or a platform where you wanted to design your own life story, what would you like it to look like?
I like the idea of a scrapbook.
You like the idea of the scrapbook, Dawn? Dawn, I can't see you, so I'm going to have to rely on you.
I'll use the chat.
Use the chat.
Yeah. I'm just going to have to answer a phone call, though. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So for Dawn, she was saying about that idea of a scrapbook, and I guess what do other people think? Does that seem like a really good idea? I know when. Sorry, Di. It looks like you're typing into the chat. I might wait briefly then. You agree? Yeah.
I think a scrapbook would keep it slightly informal, because there's nothing worse than opening a website or a page up and seeing lots and lots of text, because it can be off-putting. Whereas if it looks fun and interactive, then it's likely to grab an audience.
Thanks, Paul. We also can't see you. Are you able to turn your video on?
If I must.
Sorry about that. I guess the bit that you were saying in terms of the scrapbook, and you've turned your video back off.
I'm saying, all right, there we go.
Thank you. When people, so Jen, who came to the workshop last week, one of the things that she did in her feedback was saying, actually, not this to you having to, she wondered about option that then gave you information what you could write in a particular sort of, so you weren't confronted with a lot of text. I don't know what people think about that.
Yeah, I think that's partly why I liked the idea of the scrapbook, because that suggests, pictures and some text to
Yeah.
explain that.
scrapbook, what do you envisage when you see a scrapbook on a website? Does that make sense?
Oh, I'm not that good. I don't know how you translate that into a website, but to me that suggests, there's personal pictures or postcards with some, text to discuss. And
Yeah.
I'm an IT dinosaur though, so I couldn't necessarily describe how that might translate onto a web page, but it makes you want to look, doesn't it? Then.
Yeah. So something that's not too text heavy sounds really interesting. Yeah.
I like the idea. Can I just say?
Yep.
I like the idea of having a template or some examples there.
You do,
just to,
yeah.
To guide you in, give you some idea. It's just a foundation, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a springboard to get you thinking about what you want to include.
Thanks, Di. Sorry, now I realise I've gone to Di because that's how you sign. Would you say Diana or Di?
Oh, you can do it.
Is that okay? Thank you. But having that opportunity to have something where you can see somebody else's felt important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like both options? So an opportunity to see something maybe like a book and like a video, so you can see the two different ways it works. Yeah. Actually, in asking that, in terms of the template, one of the things that's been somebody had mentioned was Dawn, the same as you in terms of being a technology dinosaur, but if it's two items. Is that background noise us? I'm ever so sorry.
Sorry.
Is that you, Dawn?
I think it might have been. I've got rid of the background noise now.
No, that's okay. I was thinking, is it me? Is a chat box. So I guess the different ways that people were thinking about it is, do you land onto a screen and you see examples of a life story? So if there is a book or a video, yeah. And then when you go into it, there are different ways that potentially you could do it. I think this is where I wish Chris was here, who's our developer. So you either have it as a template, so it comes up and you populate it. So, there's a bit for text and a bit for your photograph. But he was also saying, and Leslie and Catherine, join me if I get this wrong, you can have a little, he said a paperclip, but I was imagining a little, like, icon that was, said hello, but could talk you through how to, you're nodding.
Yeah, it's like an assistant.
Yeah. Sorry, the people, the helpers. Would so that sorry, just to say that, so an assistant that would be able to, if you were struggling a little bit, they would be able to pop up and let you know. We wanted to know if that was a good idea or not.
Brian, front page of Google there was a picture of the next more pages, the podcast audio clips. Yeah. Certainly looking at audio.
Yeah. Brian, when you say including audio clips, as in that you can upload audio clips for yourself, or that you'd want it, that ability for it to speak to you to let you know what to do. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sorry, Brian. I just wanted to check with you in terms of audio clips and type it in, or anybody else. Were you thinking, or she knew, what is it that it would be something that would speak to you, saying populate here, or that opportunity to upload?
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful to have something that would guide you through.
Yeah.
I think you might have to assume that a lot of people who will be populating with their stories, they might not be very tech savvy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, because otherwise people will walk away. You know,
Absolutely.
if it's too difficult, it's too complicated, it's like, oh, I really want to do this, but it's proving, you know, beyond my capability. So I think you need to go for the simplest way, and to talk people through what they might want to do, having seen some examples, would help.
Yeah, so really having a range, and I think I agree with you. I'm being genuine when I'm not. I feel, and I know a lot of people in terms of across the lifespan, it is really thinking about the different ways that we can help. So potentially having those examples, and then having that system.
You haven't got quite a blank canvas then, have you? Because that's another thing that you're likely to not know where to start even, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, I was thinking, I'm drawing from the Alzheimer's Society, and they, people may be aware, they do the kind of This Is Me, in terms of it has, it starts with some guidance in terms of how to do it, and then offers you different areas. So, and I'm not saying necessarily we follow it in that same way, but there's a kind of a background, then the sort of hobbies, what's important to me. Is everyone kind of thinking a similar sort of thing, that it helps to maybe have some information on what is a life story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You could have a few questions put forward, saying what part of Worcester were you born in or lived in, and sort of you tease the story out of into text, or if they are savvy enough, into audio or video.
Yeah. Brilliant. Hearing you say that, Brian, we, Gina mentioned it earlier, we are wanting, as part of this platform, people saying that being able to upload their own audio clip so that they can talk and say their memories. So if it was played as a video, you would hear your voice say. So if it was me, you know, I came to Worcester when I was 12, you know, I'd be able to talk then through my own story. That bit that everyone...
Sorry, Tash, can I just ask a question? Something's just occurred to me. When my mother was alive, and she lived in Worcester all her life, somebody from the records office went and met with her and asked her to record her story of growing up in Worcester in the 1920s, I suppose. She was born in 1912. And also what it was like in Worcester in the Second World War. There were two, well, they were originally on tape, but then they were converted to CD, and I've got the CDs with my mum's voice on them. I mean, something like that could just be downloaded direct from the CDs, could it, and go on the website?
Well, I guess there's two bits for me there, Di. There's one in terms of the Know Your Place Worcester, that there may be particular elements that you'd want to put on there, and then I guess the Worcester life story would absolutely, that there would be an opportunity then. I'm looking at our IT. I have to make sure, genuinely, in terms of my knowledge, not offering something I can't. But yes, you would be able to upload that into the platform, and that would sit as your life story in there, and then you could choose who you wanted to share that with.
It's just that it wouldn't be my life story. It would be a life story of my mother. It would be part of my mother, and that's okay, is it, to do that?
Well, I guess at the moment, and you make a really valid point, what came up, and we're not as far down the line yet, is in terms of who creates the life story, and how do we ensure that there's consent to share that information. So hearing you say that, Di, can I take that as a way, as an idea that actually some people may like, is to upload somebody else's life story, and how to share, and what that would look like, and how we could do that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So because actually you're not the first person that's asked about that. So it's not something that we'd necessarily thought about. We'd come from thinking about people writing their own life stories, but actually that's come up a couple of times. So we definitely need to explore that.
And I mean, when you think about it, it means that actually some of the history is going back even further than the memories of people who are now alive.
Yeah.
But if you can actually tap into their older generation and some of their stories, then you're actually going back further in time.
Yeah.
And that's certainly where really your place would come in for that kind of material as the kind of I suppose the repository, I suppose, for the wider histories and that sort of information that you might want to share with the public, I suppose, potentially.
Yeah. Just in terms of the bits that people were saying in terms of the templates, and Paul, jump in terms of, I'm not used to you being so quiet. The bit in terms of, I guess, having chapters. So what's come up before is that potentially, depending on how the platform develops, it may be that for some people, there will be parts of my life story, and this moves into the social element that I want to share with people. So that may be, at the last workshop, they talked about big events, didn't they? That potentially they may want chapters of big events where I was in terms of, I don't know why Diana and Charles's weddings come up, but that's the one. But big events where you could do that, and that may be something that you want to share in terms of those chapters. But there may be other chapters of our lives that we don't want to share in a more public thing. It'd be more with perhaps just families or people who are supporting us. So we were wondering about splitting it so that you have the opportunity, hearing that you could almost have chapters of your life, and then you would decide which you wanted to print off or put onto video or share wider, or what you'd hold as your own. And I don't know what people thought of that idea. And again, we're still at the idea stage in terms of what that would look like. Does that seem something that would be, yeah. There looks like there's some information on the chat. So as a living next of kin, I'm sure we could look at love stories for people who have passed away, sharing the stories of parents and other family members. We might just need to fill in something that confirms their relationship. Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Di, just in terms of answering your question, I was being a bit more hesitant in terms of what we can and can't do until we've done that. But speaking to IT, it looks like something. Yeah. So it's great doing a workshop, isn't it? I've got people in my ear saying, "I know we can talk a bit more about that." So I'm not sure how it would look like, but yes, I think it's coming up more regularly. But yeah, in terms of the. Wait, did I cut you off then? No.
For me, I'm going to say the personalisation things needs to be easy and simple, because you can only really get one chance, aren't you? Because if people aren't able to do it quickly and easily, they're not going to come back. Yeah, and there's some awful websites out there, mostly local authorities, that if you don't click the right box, it just sits there.
Yeah.
And it can be really off-putting. So we need to make sure that's really easy to use. I mean, how many times on the quizzes have people asked about how do they get the scores, even though it's on there, they don't read it properly. So, that's going forward for me.
Yeah.
And
hold on, Paul, just before your second point, when we say easy to use, what would that look like for you or anyone else? Because I think there's a not too populated, but populated enough that you're not confronted by a blank screen and then feel overwhelmed that.
I think we just need to make it obvious that it's something that needs to go in there, and not some sort of like script as to what's coming. Some of the best websites go on to have got the greyed outline in the boxes, if you see what I mean,
Yep.
as the examples, and that's what I find easiest,
Yeah.
because you know exactly what you should be putting in there,
Yeah.
right? But others may not find that easy.
Well, but this is the point of the workshop, really, is to gain as much feedback from the people that are going to be using it, that say, actually, look, this is what works for me. So it's really relevant having the bits that you're all saying, because then the next stage is Chris. So Chris is our developer from First One, who is working with the Health and Care Trust to develop it. The next stage will be taking all these ideas and then starting to build a wireframe and one that we can test out and have a play with them and say, you know, based on your ideas, does this work?
Brian's just making a point that pages should not be over cluttered. I think that people do that. Also make sure text can be clearly read with proper colour contrast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really relevant. So sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I just saw a text actually, which is very relevant about colour contrast. Because we've been doing some work with sites concern about making sure the contrast are right, so people with visual impairments can read the things. So that's important for us at the moment.
Yeah, as part of the Health and Care Trust, we have what's known as accessibility standards. So we have to ensure that we meet those, and there's a department, and that's headed up, and certainly this platform. But Brian, it's a really valid point, and Paul, that those things need to be considered. And I know last time it was mentioned in terms of different languages. So absolutely. I don't know, Catherine and Leslie, if you want to add anything to that in terms of our accessibility standards.
No. We do have standard NHS policies that cover things like language, colourblind as well.
So thank you both, because you're right. Without that, it stop people from being able to access it. Yeah. Paul, you were going to make a second point, because I won't stop there.
I'm not sure how relevant this is a little bit. I'm thinking is people's life stories are personal, obviously, to themselves. So you want them to upload it, and I'd hate for sort of like some comments to go in there saying, "Oh, that didn't happen," or "That didn't happen," and all the rest of it. So you almost want to encourage people to put their life story, because they see different spins on things. You know what I mean? We all maybe at the same concept, we see different things, don't we? Yeah. So I'd hate for some negative comments to go on and upset people, but we want to encourage it for them to put their take on things as well, rather than the negative, if that makes sense.
No, it really makes sense. And I guess this is the two bits that we're talking about. There is, sorry if I use myself, but rather than putting it on somebody else, if I was creating my own life story, so the purpose of this is we have Know Your Place, where you can put public information on that's public. We may not want to share everything, and it may be that that's our take on it. So it's a private one where I may draw from Know Your Place, the internet, but also my bits, and I'm creating my life story that I decide who to share it with. So I was saying, there's somebody that I know who wrote her family history and printed it off as 50 books. And she gave it to family members. And then it goes into our second bit, is people are talking about a social element, about people might want to share their life stories with each other or other people's life stories. And I think what came up from the last one is thinking about how we do meaningful and safe way that allows some of the things that you're saying in terms of, I think the example was around the dress that somebody was wearing, and that, but you know, from from different factors and how we enable that to be a sort of safe platform, but that kind of social element of sharing a life story.
So you'd like to think
Does that make
people.
sense?
Yeah, I'm say you'd like to think people focus on the positive. You know, oh, I remember that, but I also remember this happening as well. So you got that feed going throughout. But you know, you look at certain websites as well. Is you put yourself up there, and then people just fire at you. See what I mean? And I'd hate for that to happen.
Yeah. So hearing you say that, and it's moving slightly, sorry, into our the next domain about looking at in terms of would that be relevant to have that social element. Can I just come back very quickly, because one of the questions I wanted to ask was in terms of music. It's come up a few times in terms of post that as to whether having music on the on your own life story. So whether that's something we think would be beneficial or not.
Songs can have a lot of meaning to people, can't they?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely, Dawn, and that's what we were saying. Obviously, we know for people living with dementia and sort of across the board, really. So people may have heard some sort of things for life. So, Dawn, that's something that you'd be interested in.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something there, Brian?
I think a song can take you back to a certain point in time, can't it?
Yeah.
And back very strong memories.
Well, you're on mute, Brian.
You're on mute, Brian.
Music is copyright. If you publish any music, you can be subject to copyright. You know, so you can't just take a piece of music and use it.
We've been speaking.
Yeah, if there's a local group who's paid the music, you know, you could probably get away with it. But so you've got to be very careful.
No,
you can get a PIR license, can't you, or some whatever it's called, where you can, you know, these disco people are supposed to have them so they can play music in the live thing. And the TV people have to have those music licenses as well, so they can play.
You have to pay very dearly.
We're not that far yet, and you both make really valid points. As Dawn was saying, we do know the benefits of music in terms of triggering memories and bringing that together, and the value of it in terms of there's some research looking at life stories where music has been included and it's found to be more powerful. Where we're at in terms of this platform is finding out what people think, and then for the developer to be able to explore whether that's possible or not. So I'm not saying we can do it. We wanted to see what people thought, and then we can take that as feedback to look into it. So as it stands at the moment, if Chris was here, I can hear him in my head. It's not insurmountable, but it'd have to be looked at. But is that fair? Yeah. I'm getting that. So there may be, as you say, a financial implication. Dawn, I was just thinking for you, was there anything else in terms of personalisation that or what the book would look like? I think that you're, you know, from the that you're working with that would be helpful. Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I might come back with more thoughts in time, but I would think the simpler the better.
Yeah.
And particularly on a you know, an iPad or something, if you can just touch picture or an icon to hear whatever has been recorded and things like that. Something engaging with, you know, pictures that will take interest, not too text heavy, I would think.
No, that's really helpful. And actually, for the people that weren't at the initial workshop, one of the first things that was asked was, how do we think most people will access the platform? And I think the feedback was it would be by tablet and making sure that the platform's mobile enabled as opposed to say a laptop. Is that fair, everyone? Because I think, as we were saying, and as Doug was saying, that depending on if you're with dementia across the lifespan, people being able to access that and making it so it doesn't stop them from being able to use it.
Yeah.
So something that potentially I realise that I'm talking it that's easy to slide across, and you only have to do the
Yeah.
moving on to the next one. So Paul, this feeds into your bit. So I guess the bit that we're first saying is I have a life story book that I create for me. I decide either to share it with family, or I may be living, or friends, family and friends. I may be living in a care home, and we had Sammy, I had to think then, from Latimer Court coming and saying that sometimes staff will sit alongside people and they will talk and share and trigger memories and stories, and we know the power of that. There may also be the ability to have that on video. So you've got kind of got that sharing where there's that consent to do it. This social bit moves into a slightly different element. So one of the questions that's come up is, do we, within the platform, so potentially, sorry for using my hat, you have one, this is my life story I create and I decide who I share it with, but there may be a social element around that I can click on and we share life stories. Now, we are going to have to think about what that would look like, but without going into the detail of how we do that, I guess we wanted to ask that, but it's come up quite a bit about is there a space, like you were saying, Paul, in terms of people being able to say, you know, this is what happened, this is what I was doing when X happened. I know we had feedback from Aisha earlier saying, you know, something similar to the Facebook groups that are there, but in a more, I guess, more potentially contained and safe space to be able to do that.
This has a potential for me of making it really, really good, or
Right.
or if you get it wrong, it could have a negative effect.
Yeah.
Because it can reconnect people and open up the discussion. Or, I mean, I've heard of people from Barnsley who used to grow up in Worcester doing the quizzes and various other places around things, and they're all talking about the quizzes, and it's a way of reconnecting.
Yeah.
And finding people you may have lost touch with. But again, it only needs some negative comments, and then people will switch off.
Yeah.
Perhaps there could be some guidance as to how people kind of behave when they're putting these comments.
Yes.
I think that would work, Diane.
Yeah. And I think certainly what's going to be happening is looking at other platforms. So at the moment within the Health and Care Trust, we have a platform for young people, and they've been looking at a social platform, and I believe they've been looking into the guidance in terms of being able to stop people from posting. There's like trigger words, if I've understood that correctly. So if this is something that we were looking at for our platform, we would certainly be looking to that guidance in terms of what that would look like. So I guess the first question is coming back to whether we want that kind of social element within Worcester Life Stories platform, because it keeps coming up, doesn't it? And then, like you say, we really will need to think through, okay, what would that look like? Would it be public? Would it be closed? How do you keep
It's also whether we think about signposting into places where that social element can occur.
That could be a way of doing it, couldn't it?
Yeah, we've already got things like the Worcester Life Stories Facebook pages. Obviously, has a, you know, it's not entirely open, but it's sort of signposting across the different things that might be happening. So potentially there might be maybe at some point some physical events going on, so that could be a social opportunity. So I mean, you know, I'm not saying, you know, as only that, but potentially that could be feed into that, a place to find out about other places to go.
Sorry, Di, you were saying something, but it wasn't registering.
I was just saying I couldn't hear Sheena speaking quite as clearly as I can hear you speaking.
Let me move it. We are socially distanced in the same way, so we've got one microphone.
I see.
What we were saying is that there's people are interested in a social element, and do we do that within the platform? And if we do that, how do we do it safely? Is it about signposting to other places? But potentially it's coming up quite a lot. Paul, you've mentioned it. It was mentioned quite a lot at the other workshop. It's coming through the feedback that people are sending outside of the workshops. You said a comment, but I missed it in terms of that social bit. Is that something, I guess, if you were thinking from Dawn works in the older adult mental health survey?
So you're breaking up, Tash. I can't hear you.
Sorry, let me say that again. Dawn works in our older adult mental health service. I was wondering if she thought that would be something that would be helpful to the people that we work with.
I'm not sure of names, I'm afraid, but your colleague, when she mentioned that there could be a link to other social media platforms, might be a way of doing it without having to monitor what might be said in those platforms and things. If there's other platforms that do that already.
Yeah. When you're thinking about monitoring, that would come down into
when someone was talking about some of the negative comments that can be made on social media and things.
Yeah. So I guess there's something in terms of, oh, sorry, it's Sheena, by the way. Sheena Payne-Love.
Sorry, Sheena.
Okay, Dawn, I realise our names aren't up there and I can't find an option to change it.
And another thought I had, Tash, and I'm sorry it's going off on a slight tangent, but the work that we're doing currently on a patient portal, there could be some benefit of there being a link to Worcester Life Stories within that patient portal.
Yeah, hold that because that's coming up on clinical.
Great minds think alike then. We won't say the second part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks, Dawn. And only for doing that, otherwise we'll miss it. So that bit that we're saying is I think a social element, which is, I guess when I was first thinking about this platform, I hadn't thought about the platform having its own social bit. It was about being able to create your life story in an easier way, having access to Know Your Place Worcester, being able to upload it. And more importantly, this is going to be the first opportunity where people can have their life story in a video. So to actually be able to play it rather than as a book, the evidence is telling us that that's so much more powerful. But I think what's really coming out of this project is not just sharing with people for enhancing perhaps the people care, so working with care home staff, but more of a social element, which is what the life packs were about. But I think we do need to think about the life story bit. Is that fair? Yeah.
Yeah.
But what that looks like, we don't know. Sorry, Di.
Can I just ask? I may have missed a bit. I had to go and deal with a telephone call. But I just wondered if once you put something on, can you go back and edit it?
Yes, that will be the great thing about it. So it will be yours. We haven't gone into the detail yet in terms of how you log on, but you'd be able to go in and continually edit.
Because you know what it's like. I mean, my husband's done his a life story. Sadly, he grew up in South London, so it's not relevant to Worcester. But even now he's remembering other things that he didn't put in the original, and that would be the same for everyone, won't it? There'd be somebody would talk to you about something and you think, oh, I should have put that in the book,
Yeah, and it can grow as your own. No, yeah, absolutely. And I think so see me keep looking over here because we've got Catherine and Leslie who are capturing all the feedback, and hearing you say that will just be thinking about what that looks like. So if we went move on to, so I've mentioned Sheena's brilliant quizzes, and I don't know how many people have seen them. Sheena, do you just want to talk a little bit about them? Because
Yeah,
they
certainly. So I think at least one, oh, you have Grant Marvellous. I think most of you have probably seen them now, but so we've had our weekly quizzes that we've been running from the start of lockdown, which, you know, fairly simple format, just 10 questions, multiple choice. But really, the premise of them is that it's, you know, they're interesting photos of Worcester that hopefully trigger memories for people and get people chatting. And we've had the response has been amazing. I mean, this week's quiz, we've got about 4,000 people that have taken part already, and that's week on week, which is just incredible. But it's around those, it's the conversations that take place around those, really, you know, the sort of threads that we're seeing coming through via things like Facebook and Twitter, and then, you know, the phone calls that we're getting as well, with people sharing their stories. So, but obviously the idea is that, you know, those are up there on the website each week, but we're building a whole bank of these now as well that can be used going forward and visited if people want to make use of them. And I think particularly for, you know, residents in care homes and that sort of thing, it's quite a useful resource for people just to use as a tool for accessing those images, really, and getting conversations started. So it's whether people would feel that an element of the platform might be around games, with the quizzes possibly as a sort of key element of that, or whether, you know, what do you think, really, what might be useful with that piece that people would want to make use of?
Dawn, I guess I was thinking in terms of, I know there was mentioned in terms of cognitive stimulation therapy and other, sorry, you've gone off mute.
Oh, I've taken mute off now. I didn't quite hear the last bit of what you said, though.
I guess it was also just asking you in terms of, I know Hanneke and Amy had sort of been in touch in terms of how we could use this platform. So I thought you might have ideas there. So we've kind of got the, I guess, a gaming sort of, yeah. I don't know, what do people think?
The quizzes are great.
Yeah.
It just shows the power of the visual in order to prompt the memory.
Yeah.
You know, you see a photo, you see a picture, and straight away, you know, you think if it's familiar, of course, it straight away reminds you of something. So I think there's obviously the visual and the audio, as well as the written. The text, it needs all three, really.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, isn't there?
It's a question of whether you want to develop something personal for the site and willing to spend money on it, or whether you want something
Yes.
quick and simple.
I guess this is what we're asking for, because it's come up.
I mean, I sent you an idea I had about maybe using something like Worcester version of Monopoly, or something like that, where you've got the street names, and if you land on it, it gives you some facts and figures and things that happened around in Worcester.
Yeah.
It's how you develop that, whether you can do with dice and yeah.
Just from a practical point of view, in terms of making what we do achievable, how much do we know of how much of these sort of ideas are already available, and actually links to sites that might already be doing this appropriately for our client group could be added instead?
So Dawn, it's a really valid point. So I don't know if you were on when I first started. So
I've been unable to attend, or I'm going to have to leave again shortly for another meeting, I'm afraid.
No, it was just to say when we first started the project, when I first got in touch with Sheena, I didn't know half the things that were out there in terms of the gloving project and other things that were there. So we have, alongside what we're thinking here, is it a link So we've talked about sort of know your place and what would go into there. Brian, I can see you've put about the changing face of voice. You're right. There's lots of things that are out there. We definitely know there's no online life story platform. Saying there aren't things there. So I guess we're gathering ideas and doing it twofold. Is it out there and can we join up? And if it and people want it, what would that look like?
Yeah.
So there are so our hope within the life packs is to put links to Music of Worcester and a number of others if they consent to. It's about yeah, it's not recreating things that are already out there, because that's just not helpful or good use of money, to be honest.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same. If there are quizzes already or anything like that, there may well not be, but if there are, maybe we don't reinvent the wheel.
So the quizzes, Sheena's already been doing, so there weren't those quizzes beforehand. They're
Right.
out there. People have said how brilliant they are, and that's one example of something we've linked to. And then Paul's obviously got another example in terms of a different way of people engaging with the photographs. So it's just whether it would be worthwhile or not. So this isn't a yes or a no. It's just ideas. It's ideas right now.
Well, it would fit nicely with your CST sort of interventions, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and that's what Hanneke was saying. And I just wonder if there's anything from your perspective that you're thinking, throw it in now, because the more we get feedback now on what would be most helpful for the people or everybody, we can. That's when we can start saying yes to it, really.
Yeah.
From a CST,
I'll run it over, Tash, and I'll email you, and I'm going to have to apologise because I've got to go into another meeting instead. Apologies, everybody.
No, thanks for that, Dawn. And if there are things on that, yeah, would you email, and I'll make sure it gets across, and we'll ask.
And I'll ask the team for their thoughts as well, and can hopefully give you some ideas.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Dawn.
So, Paul,
The quiz.
I didn't hear your idea. What was your what? So I'm sorry that you sent this idea that I hadn't. So what's your idea for the platform? We may have lost him.
Oh.
Paul, sorry, you said you had an idea.
I couldn't hear a word of the thing.
I said you said you'd sent us an idea for the platform, and I'm really sorry if I'd missed that. Would you mind sharing it with us again?
I'm going to say the idea was, I mean, you've probably seen, you all know what Monopoly is, and there's a Worcester version, isn't there? Different streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought if we could almost have a dice or something like that, random dice on the thing, and you just go through the street, and as you land on the dice, a street, it brings up facts or photos of that street, so it almost interacts as well.
Okay.
Quite like that.
Yeah, I love that idea.
You could actually use we could actually use the quiz questions that we've already produced potentially as well, and just sort of embed.
I mean, the other one I thought about is if you didn't want to go down the Monopoly route, you could almost do it as a snakes and ladders as well. Again, with various streets and places dotted on the snakes and ladders, you could use like the old jail as a as the top of a snake to go down and things like that, and just little things like that. But what I was going to say earlier is about gaming and what it needs to become. Is the quizzes are absolutely fantastic, because the amount of people I know doing it is untrue. But it's a 2-year project. Are you going to be able to keep those quizzes going for 2 years? Or does it need to morph or work into start to become something else?
I think over time I will probably have to reduce the frequency of them, certainly, because at the moment once a week is quite challenging. Apart from anything else, actually selecting photos that are appropriate and relevant it can be challenging. But I do think, there is the demand there for it. So actually continuing with those, I think is valuable and important. It's just how we deliver that and how frequently we'll be able to do that in the future. So it's a sort of watch this space really, I think, with that, isn't it?
For me, having an archive of them as well that you can go back to repeatedly will be really. I can see that with people that I work with, where not losing it. So even if it slows down, and I think that's what the care homes were saying, wasn't it, in terms of that.
We've probably got getting on to 30 quizzes already that have been produced over the last few months. So, and for a lot of those, because the value of them in a way is not so much about the questions themselves, it's about actually looking at the, actually bringing some of those back for people is something that we could potentially do as well. But yeah.
Is there a potential of reaching out to other people to actually put their own quizzes about Worcester on the forum and produce their own?
Yeah, possibly working with some of the stakeholders and partners as well to do that. We have done a little bit of that, not very much yet, but working with Museums Worcestershire when we combined the quiz with museum objects one week. So that was quite nice, although didn't necessarily reduce the workload particularly, but I think exploring those sorts of options more would be valuable. And it may be an opportunity for engaging volunteers as well. So there are options there to look at.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Paul. Those were some brilliant ideas. I've been looking at Catherine and Leslie as to whether they've captured those. Sorry. Yeah. Just in terms of what you were saying about just creative ways, and you're happy for us to kind of share that with more people, because I think your ideas just helps to generate other ideas.
I copyrighted it last week, by the way.
Yeah, I did, I realise that we've lost Dawn, but one of the things, I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, we do know that life story work can be really beneficial for example, if you are experiencing mental health difficulties, doing a life review with somebody can help in terms of recognising strengths or being able to, as I say, celebrate moments in life. But we also know for people living with dementia, people in care, it can also help to speak to professionals in terms of what's important to you and your life. And so I've mentioned this is in terms of routines and things that can be really important. So I used to be an inpatient, and we use life story work regularly with people living with dementia who come into hospital. One of the things that we wanted to talk about really is that we said that this will be a separate platform that is held by the person, but we're wondering about a connection with what our patient records, where we're able to access it as staff, whether that's something we want to consider. So Paul also, I guess, in terms of thinking about programs that I know use life story work, and that ability, if it's a video, thinking about how systems talk to each other. With the people that are here, I guess if I could just ask that question, do you think it's a good idea for us to be able to do that? So thinking about, I guess what we were thinking, and as we come on, is that it would just be an upload option. So if I create my life story here, I would have the opportunity to say, yes, I am happy, and I give consent for it to go into my record that sits with the NHS service. Does that make sense without being too optimistic?
Yeah.
Does that sound like a good idea, everybody?
I think it's an option. I'm saying as long as they've got the option to do it, then yeah, fine.
Yeah. I as I've said, we know actually it can, and it was one of the reasons for me in terms of setting up this is that it's going to enable people to create life stories more easily and in a more powerful way that will really make a difference if people are accessing our services. So it's great that everyone said yes to in terms of following that up. I won't go on about that if that's okay. So yes is fine by me. Last bit that we've that connects to the life pack themes is on previous workshops. Sport came up really significantly. So people were talking a lot about particular areas, and it was, would it be helpful in the platform to have a space that was about particular themes or subjects, or not just places, wasn't it, Shane? So we spoke to I've got her name, was saying about potentially different populations, of speaking to the Italian culture of Worcester, Polish, yeah. So a number of different people. Then there was something about potentially having a sporting one. This was Lisa Yates, who is our head of IT here, was wondering about different options that may include nature. So it was just, would that be something that we thought was helpful? And if so, what things would you do there?
I think there should be something on industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite a few factories. There used to be a lot of factories, manufacturing factories in Worcester.
Yeah.
Metal box, surely keep in the household today. And Archdales, Swords, lots of places which are now no longer there. And you know, I think it's still relevant actually, because sometimes if you see when people have passed away and there's a notice in the paper, it sometimes says formerly of, and it'll put a factory that that person used to work at, as a means of identifying them with their former work colleagues. And I think if you had a page for industry, or whatever you want to call it, working life, then you get people sharing their experiences of factory work, which no longer really goes on very much in Worcester now.
Yeah.
It's industry is certainly something that comes up a lot for us in terms of interpretation around heritage in the city itself. Something that people are very passionate about and very interested in. And you know, I think it's something that forms a huge part of people's lives for many years. For those communities that have grown up around particular factories in the city, and you see Facebook groups dedicated to them, you know, so it is certainly something that I think would be really useful to reflect here. Thanks for that. That's really important.
Yeah. Sorry, Brian, did you have something?
Having spent a lot of time looking at the changing face of Worcester website, there are quite a few factories which hardly get a look in on there. A complete blank. No doubt there are somewhere.
And there's some big industries been lost in Worcester, and some big factories that have still got massive connections with the city. I'm thinking of Cadbury's and a few of the others who have regular stories written about them. So it would be a good way of connecting with those and linking people back.
Yeah. No, that's so industry, sport,
culture.
Yeah.
I do like culture. I think it's a big thing at the moment. I mean, it's Hate Crime Week and all the rest of it this week.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, I think, I mean, yeah, there's an interfaith forum within Worcestershire and Worcester, so it'd be good to get them on board to have their say about how things are for them. So, yeah.
Anything else? Anything else that if we were thinking about it? And so each time we've mentioned this feels, and I'm not sure what it would look like, but the answer generally is yes, because people say, have you thought about X topic? So there's something about how we bring that information together for people in those life packs that are going to be really important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, are you typing there? Just so that I was thinking in terms of.
No, I was making some notes so I can send you an email later.
Oh no, thank you. I just didn't want to, because I that's another one where it's a yes, and then these are some of the things to think about, and then we can build on that as we kind of go forward. So now really it was just in terms of the sorry, difficulty I have is the face shield is on the front, but my glasses keep sliding down my nose, so I have to put them up.
A cup of tea in one of these things, honestly.
So
Can I ask a question?
yeah, of course.
How can we connect with some of the different ethnic groups in the city? Because really, it's the former industries in Worcester that attracted people from Italy in the 50s, who used to work at Uncle Bob, and from Pakistan and possibly Bangladesh in the 60s and 70s. And I just think, well, that's quite a long time ago now. It's like that 50, 60 years ago. Well, how about trying to connect with those communities to get their stories included?
Absolutely. Do you want to, Sheena? Sorry,
Yeah,
Sheena might want to talk to our conversation with Doctor.
Yeah, so we've been having conversations around this, and this is something that actually formed part of the original bid to National Lottery to actually include ethnic communities from the city within our conversations. But we've been talking to who works with I can't remember what her job title is at the moment because it keeps changing, but she works on the Talk to Me Worcester campaign, for instance, which I know, Paul, you've had some involvement with, which is really about just getting different people talking together. But certainly we have some links in with different community groups there. Certainly, Paul will be looking to you with some of your connections as well. Also, the St George's Catholic Church in Polish communities and the Italian communities in Worcester. So it's something that we're looking at, and that we're particularly looking at the possibility for art projects around photography and capturing those communities today as well. Possibly with exhibitions coming out. But that's something that we're working up for next year, really.
Yeah.
Paul.
But that could be a massive reconnect, really, couldn't it? From what I was saying, because as I said, I work with the Interfaith Forum, and the colleagues from around that would more than be willing to chip in with that. But I mean, there's a massive Polish community within Worcester now. You've got to remember, there's a big Polish community that came through from the Second World War from Purdyswell at the airfield and things like that. So it'd be good for them to reconnect with that history. Little Italy and down at Wilds Lane and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that history should be things that is captured, really.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I was talking to my line manager about yesterday was the Polish ex-servicemen's club on Rainbow Hill, which is gone now, but was basically someone's front room in a big Victorian villa with a little hatch that's serving beer. But some gentlemen that had come over, during the Second World War, got together in there and had a beer every week. And those are things that have disappeared, and possibly the younger Polish community, as you say, Paul, aren't aware of that early history, for their sort of community members. So yeah, it'd be quite interesting to capture that and to bring that engagement together within those communities as well.
One of the things I sent an email about the other day that's come out of the quizzes is people who are remembering characters from around the city. Yeah, I'm going to say I won't name names and all the rest of it. And they're all talking about it. Yeah, but in one way it would be good to capture some of that about the local characters as well.
Yeah.
But there is a flip side to that, of course, as well, because it's not that ancient history, if you see what I mean. So there may be some relatives still around. So you'd
Yeah.
have to be careful what you used.
Yeah, and there are sort of, I mean, yeah, I had been meaning to respond to you on that one actually, Paul. I've been away from my desk a little bit over the last couple of days, but certainly characters, because the nature of our collection is really around historic buildings and sites and sort of streetscapes. Really, actual individual characters are less easy to find within the collection, but there are a few of those, I think, Brian, within the Changing Face of Worcester, aren't there? Sort of photographs of people like Chicken George, who anyone that spent time in Worcester in the 80s will probably remember. He did like to have a good old dance on the high street. So, and then there was the lady you mentioned, or the white lady.
The White Lady was one where everybody was talking about.
Yeah.
I remember her.
So certainly some of those characters, and I think that's sort of kind of goes back to the Worcester life stories theme, and the importance of people and their individual stories. So certainly capturing that is really valuable. Yeah.
So just in terms of thinking about what next, the next Worcester Life Stories platform is on the 20th of November. So what's happening right now is, first one is the developer that we're working with. They will be taking all the information from these workshops. We're also, and Paul, looking, or anybody really, Gina and I are going to be doing short videos that are based on the workshop and go out to places that may struggle in terms of getting onto a workshop, like a mini video. So care homes have asked that they can have it where they can play it at their leisure, have places where they can do written feedback and then send that in. So we're looking at trying to gather as much feedback as we can. You've heard me mention a few times that we've just been emailing saying, have you thought about X, and sharing that. So we're gathering as much information as we can. And in the background, first one is taking all that, starting to build what they think based on the feedback the platform would look like. Now, I'm not going to do this justice because I'm not a technical person. That's not even the right word. But in terms of the, I believe that there's going to be wireframes. So there's more diagrams in terms of how it will look like, and then move setting up a website that we can test and have a play with, and continually receive feedback that what we thought we wanted and what it looks like will happen. So the next stage that will happen is that start of have we got the feedback right? Is this what you were expecting it to look like? Have we got all those individual elements that we've said, have you thought about this? We would like this element. So towards the gaming, information, how that life story will develop. So that's the next bit for ourselves. And then for the Know Your Place Worcester, sorry, Sheen, I just need to know what's okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Sash, I know you spoke about it before, but are you going to develop a site on part of the website where people can leave where they're actually interacting from? Like I said, people all around the country are doing it, who've left the city, might be even across the world now. Who knows? I mean, it'd be good to capture and see who's interacting with you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean that's something that that we partly see through the website and the user stats on there. But yeah, actually just having sort of something on our Facebook page and sort of asking the question really, and asking people where they're
Yeah. No, and thank you for that, because I guess what we're thinking about all the time is, what do we want in this platform? What will we gather from kind of Know Your Place and those different elements? And I think hearing you say that, Paul, that there's something about the social element of the Life Stories platform that we've really just got to consider. But I'm not sure what that looks like yet without the developer here saying, to allow people, as you say, from outside of Worcester to be able to comment. Sorry, Sheen, I cut you off.
No, that's good. Yeah, so on that, our next Middle Place workshop will be on Friday the 6th of November. So that will really be an opportunity to, some of what we've talked about today actually will fall through in terms of things for some of the overlays of information on the website. So the sorts of information people would like to access on there. So getting your ideas feeding into that would be really helpful. We're also going to look at the guidance information and the documents that will support people accessing that website. So you may have already seen some of what's out there linking to Middle Place Bristol and Middle Place West of England. So there are sort of guidance documents to help you and guide you through the Middle Place platform. So I think what I will possibly be doing is sending some of those links out to people in advance of the next workshop, so you've got opportunity to have a look at those and bring to the workshop what you feel is working and what's missing, what you really need to be able to access that most effectively. So that's really what we're going to be covering in the Middle Place workshop on the 6th of November. And also ways that you as possibly as volunteers might want to engage with it as well. So there's also that element that we want to be able to provide volunteering opportunities for that part of the project.
So it's really just to say thank you very much. I was saying to Sheena, we know it was really short notice in terms of what, in terms of the technical difficulties. I found it really invaluable, the feedback that we've had today, that is going to go into shaping the platform. So I just want to say thank you, really, because without you, it would be what our hopes are, really. So thank you, and yeah, I don't know anyone else, and I said this last time, I'm never going to a biscuit.
We have flapjacks here.
Yeah, so if there's anything you would like to let us know, or Brian, you mentioned you've made some notes to send by email. As much feedback at this point would be, we'd really appreciate that, and we're listening to all of it. So, sorry, I was just reading Leslie's comment about valuing feedback. I think it's just been really helpful. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a chance to go get a drink and a biscuit, and see you on the 6th of November.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.